Our story begins in a strange, fantastical world where one day, mana suddenly appeared in massive quantities. With the arrival of mana came magic, and along with it, demonic beasts emerged as well. As we all know, every action has its reaction, so naturally, humans began awakening their own powers too. Now, in the present, we see our heroes venturing into the most dangerous dungeon in the entire world. These 5 heroes form the strongest hunter squad alive today. The dungeon they are inside right now belongs to none other than the Demon King Vigor, a being capable of wielding all 5 primary elements of magic. We're then introduced to the leader of this squad, Bai, who tells us that he has been leading this team for 10 years. Their current mission inside this deadly dungeon is to completely clear it of monsters, so they can stop demons from pouring out day after day to attack humanity. The moment the monsters appear before them, the entire team charges forward. From Bai's words, we learn that their squad is known as the Royal Legion. We're then introduced to the rest of Bai's team. First, there's Bao, an assassin-class hunter ranked L, which, as we discover, is actually the highest rank in the world right now, even above SSS rank. Their current mission is also classified as L rank, just like their teammate Han, a cloud mage. But no one in the group seems worried. After all, they've already cleared 99 dungeons of the exact same difficulty. The 4th member of the Royal Legion is Lao, a galaxy mage who specializes in support magic. He tells us that the team's plan after this mission is to take a long, well-earned break. As soon as Bai receives Lao's support magic, boosting his strength and speed to more than double, the leader launches himself straight at Vigor with a devastating nuclear-level attack, obliterating him in one decisive blow. Speaking of nuclear power, this is when we learn that our hero's element is, in fact, nuclear energy, and his class is that of a Holy Knight warrior. As his devastating attack comes to an end, the system notifies the team that Vigor has been slain and their mission is complete. However, Lao doesn't seem entirely at ease. The mission felt far too easy, especially considering that the government had summoned them specifically to handle it. Sure, the Royal Legion is the strongest team in the entire world, but there are plenty of other squads who could have finished this mission without much trouble. Bai replies to his friend, explaining that the intel they received was dangerous. Report said this Demon King could wield all elemental powers. Their conversation is cut short when Bao, who happens to have a crush on our hero, walks up and teasingly asks if he's going to treat them to lunch, or if they'll have to eat without him. Bai tells her to cut it out and get ready, because yes, he's treating the entire team. At the mention of their team, Bai suddenly remembers that their 5th member is missing. When he asks his comrades about him, they tell him the guy said he was collecting monster gems from their kills. Bao mocks him, saying he's the slowest one in the squad. Even Lao agrees, adding that the guy lazed around and didn't even help in the fight. But then, something strange happens. As their teammate approaches, he's laughing in a way that sends chills down their spines. Out of nowhere, he raises his hands in the air and announces that he's starting the purification process immediately. The moment his aura erupts and spreads across the area, Han is struck with a severe head wound. All of our heroes turn to him in shock, unable to process what's happening, or how their 5th comrade just killed Han after 10 whole years of fighting side by side. The mysterious man simply tells them he's just following the ruler's orders, nothing personal. Bai prepares to launch himself at the traitor, but his body refuses to move. It's as if he's been completely paralyzed. The mysterious man tells him that for the past month, he's been slipping paralysis powder into their breakfast every single day. Then, he activates his ability to control plants, sending their vine-like tendrils snaking through the air. He explains to the team that he had no choice but to start the plan early, because their strength was simply too great. As he speaks, the plant tendrils coil tightly around each of the heroes, completely restricting their movements. Through them, he triggers one of his special abilities, one that temporarily nullifies the defenses of his opponents. He informs them that his current mission is called the Purge of L-rank Hunters, and since every single one of them is L-rank, he cannot allow a single person to leave alive. With that, they watch in horror as he mercilessly kills each of their comrades, one by one, right in front of Bai, who can only stare in shock. Bai yells at him, demanding to know why he would do something like this, especially when the Royal Legion had always followed the rules and never broken the laws of the rulers. His voice grows louder as he demands to know exactly which ruler ordered their deaths. The traitor, with chilling calmness, tells him that he really is an innocent fool, and if he weren't, then he never would have died like this. Before Bai can even respond, the man's hand pierces straight through his chest in a brutal strike. He coldly states that the rulers always do whatever they want, reasons be damned. Bai, struggling for breath, tells him that maybe what he says is true, but they were supposed to be comrades. After 10 years together, they were more like family. The man laughs at his words, replying that he never once considered any of them his friends. From the very first day he joined them, it had all been under the orders of one of the rulers, nothing more. He had only pretended to care for them, when in truth, he never saw them as anything beyond colleagues. For him, being with them wasn't a pleasant experience. It was downright revolting. Every moment he spent in their company, he secretly wished for the day he could finally kill them with his own hands. And with those final words, the traitor finishes off the last of our heroes, leaving Bai as his final victim. Then, without a hint of remorse, he turns and walks away, saying that at long last, he can finally take a vacation after 10 long years. The moment the traitor disappears, Bai's eyes suddenly snap open. At first, all he hears is a strange, otherworldly voice asking if he would like to make a deal. Confused, Bai glances around, realizing he's completely restrained, and tries to ask the voice where he is. The mysterious voice begins to take form, a figure that looks almost human, or perhaps more demonic in nature. As the shape fully manifests, Bai's eyes widen in shock. He recognizes that aura immediately. Standing before him is none other than the Demon King Vigor. Bai demands to know how he's still alive, but Vigor responds with cold composure, explaining that Demon Kings don't die that easily. Vigor tells him that they are currently inside his spiritual realm, and that the entire nation of Ne is, in fact, his original body and the source of his life force. Without wasting any more time on formalities, Vigor cuts straight to the point. He says he sensed the hatred burning inside Bai's heart, and because that hatred is so similar to the one Vigor himself carries, he's willing to offer Bai his secret ability, Resurrection. With this ability, Vigor could send Bai back to the past, giving him the chance to claim his revenge. But before he could use it on him, he needed to know, did Bai truly want that? In that moment, Bai's memories of his comrades begin to return, surfacing in a strange, gradual wave. He recalls the moments of joy he had shared with them, and the burning desire to avenge them against the traitor. Right now, there's only one thing on Bai's mind: how to kill the betrayer. And after that, he won't stop. He'll destroy the ruler who gave the order to manipulate them in the first place. Vigor smiles at his answer, saying he had expected exactly that, which is why he had already prepared everything, ready to help him right away. He presents Bai with a beating heart, telling him it's a gift. But Bai feels uneasy, asking what price Vigor expects in return for his help. Vigor simply smiles in a way that hides his true intentions, but that's all we see, because the director decided to cut the scene right there. Suddenly, Bai hears a woman's voice calling out to him, asking if he's really asleep. The voice belongs to his teacher in the year 2105, at the Academy of Abilities in the nation of G. Bai quickly scans his own body, and to his shock, realizes from the signs that he's been sent back in time, specifically, to a point before he ever awakened his powers. His thoughts are interrupted as Teacher Huang scolds him, saying he's always a failure who sleeps in class, but at the very least, he should show some respect during today's test. At the word test, Bai's heart skips a beat, because he instantly realizes he has returned to the exact day when he awakened his abilities. The shock leaves him momentarily speechless. He gets up and moves to stand at the back of the class as punishment, glancing around at his classmates, faces he hasn't seen in more than 20 whole years. As soon as our hero takes his place at the back of the classroom, Teacher Huang resumes the lesson. She tells them that in their world, there are 5 elemental powers: thunder, plant, nuclear, cloud, and finally galaxy. Now, it's the first time I've even heard of most of these elements, my friend, but the important thing is, each person can awaken only one element for life. Huang then flexes her authority a bit, proudly telling them that she herself possesses the rarest cloud element in the entire world. These elements, she explains, are divided into exactly 3 categories: combat type, support type, and finally the special type. To give them a practical example, she describes a 5-person team, each with a different element. This team happens to belong to the strongest guild in their entire academy. The team's lineup is a galaxy mage, a cloud warrior, a nuclear support mage, and finally, an assassin of thunder, known for moving at the speed of sound. Huang follows up with words of encouragement, telling them that they are the future generation. Since they were chosen by the rulers out of millions, they must be ready to carry the responsibility. She continues, explaining that there are currently over 100 different jobs, but unfortunately, not all of them are equal in power or prestige. Each person's strength is ranked into 5 tiers: green, blue, red, gold, and finally royal. Their future will be determined by both their job and their rank. And just to scare them a little more, the teacher adds that each student gets only one chance, and that chance will be this very afternoon, in the school's main hall. Later, in the school courtyard, Bai's memories begin returning to him in a gradual flow, but his thoughts and quiet self-reflection are suddenly interrupted when he sees a boy collapse to the ground right beside him. That boy didn't just fall on his own, he'd been shoved by someone, and that someone was accompanied by two other bullies just like him. The ringleader, Hong, steps forward and stomps on the bespectacled boy's hand, mocking his weakness. Hong tells him that he's nothing more than an insect in his eyes. After all, he himself is a nuclear assassin of A rank, a ruthless predator through and through. The boy with glasses apologizes, saying he had wasted too much of Hong's precious time, and even hands him some money. Watching the scene, Bai remembers that this bully was a terrible person in his previous life as well. Fortunately, Teacher Huang arrives just in time, calling out to Hong in a sharp, angry tone. Hong's expression changes. Oddly enough, he seems almost excited to see her, despite her warning him not to cause any more trouble. He approaches her casually and claims that the boy with glasses was the one who bumped into him, and that he simply made him pay some money as compensation for the pain he caused. Hong steps even closer to Huang, telling her not to play the hero, because if he used his influence, he could have her fired from the academy with ease. As he turns to leave after their exchange, he spots Bai. As expected, he shoves him to the side, telling him to go play with kids his own age. Meanwhile, the tearful boy with glasses apologizes to both the teacher and Bai, saying it's his fault for causing all this trouble. Bai thinks to himself that Teacher Huang has always been a true ally. In his previous life, she had helped him many times after he awakened his abilities during the test. His thoughts are interrupted by the voice of an instructor announcing that it is now their class's turn. The students begin heading toward the stage, while Bai talks to himself, explaining that in this world, an awakening can happen in two different ways. The first method is a natural awakening, like what happened with Hong the bully. This usually occurs when someone possesses a strong body and exceptional talent, and the awakening happens suddenly during a surge of intense emotion, especially anger. The second method, my friend, is through the Void Awakening Chamber, a creation of advanced technology. Once someone steps inside, they experience an overwhelming rush of emotion and adrenaline. Over time, this process triggers the awakening of their ability. Naturally, this can only be done once in a person's entire life, which is why Bai knows all too well that a person's future is completely tied to their awakened power. His thoughts are interrupted when Teacher Huang calls his name, telling him it's his turn. Bai tells us that in his previous life, he awakened as a nuclear warrior of A rank, but his job tier was green, the absolute lowest. Because of that, people mocked and bullied him for a very long time. That is, until he reached S rank and awakened the rarest class in the world. Bai says he hopes this trip back in time will actually make a difference, because if he ends up with the same job as before, he'll be furious. His thoughts are abruptly cut short by the awakening system's voice, announcing, "Error detected in awakening process." The reason? The system has discovered all 5 elements inside his body. Bai asks himself what on earth is happening, especially as he begins to feel an intense heat surging through him. That's when another notification appears: Infinite Awakening System activated. The system explains that he now possesses all 5 elements, and can choose any class he desires from any category. Even more incredible, when he levels up any element, he can evolve his current class, or even change it entirely into a completely different, random one. Bai feels like he's about to lose his mind, wondering if something like this could really exist, or if he's just dreaming. With this, he could literally choose any job in the entire world, even the rarest ones, and over time, he could change it or even hold multiple jobs at once. Still not fully understanding everything, Bai asks the system one final question: if he can choose any job, even a royal-ranked one. The system answers that yes, he can, but only for the very first job he picks. Every job he gains after that will be completely random. At that moment, Bai remembers Vigor's final words to him, when the Demon King said he'd give him a gift that would greatly aid him. Bai admits he never imagined Vigor meant something this powerful, but it makes sense. After all, Vigor was the only Demon King in the entire world who wielded all 5 elements. The system urges him to hurry and choose his job as quickly as possible, but warns him to be extremely careful, because this choice will define his future. Outside the chamber, the students are waiting, growing impatient. One of them grumbles that the annoying Bai has been inside for far too long. Finally, Bai steps out, and the first thing Teacher Huang asks is what job he received. Bai tells her with a regretful tone that unfortunately, he got a completely trash job, a nuclear warrior of one of the weakest ranks in the entire world. Huang's face shows clear disappointment at first, but she quickly masks it, forcing a smile so Bai won't feel bad. She tells him that she's sure he'll become stronger in the future. Bai tells her there's no need to try and comfort him, but Huang replies that she knows he must be hurting deep inside. Her words only make Huang burst out laughing even louder. He mocks her, saying everything she just said was cringe, and that he can't understand how she could sugarcoat things for poor Bai instead of just telling him he'll always be trash. Huang tries to ignore him, unfortunately because deep down, she knows his words hold some truth. But the problem is, her facial expression gives her away, and that only makes Huang want to provoke her even more. He steps up to Bai, telling him that being ranked green is basically the same as being dead and buried in the dirt. Leaning even closer to Bai's ear, he whispers that the world really isn't fair, that the rulers handpick a small group of people to be powerful, while the rest are worthless nobodies. Hearing the word rulers makes Bai's blood boil. He's right on the edge of exploding with rage. But Huang isn't done yet. He starts explaining why low-ranked people rarely see any growth in their strength, because of how their society and government treat them. The high ranks always get the most resources and wealth, while the lower ranks are left with scraps, so the gap between them only grows wider with each passing day. For that reason, Huang says he doesn't want to hear the teacher trying to convince sad little Bai that he's some kind of hidden genius. Instead, she should just tell him the truth, that his future is completely destroyed forever. Then, to rub salt in the wound, Huang gives her an example using herself, saying that, at best, she'll always just be a teacher. After all, she's only blue rank, and people of that level don't even qualify to become hunters. Huang turns his mocking words back to Bai, telling him he should just go work in a restaurant or something. But Bai finally reaches his limit. He stomps down hard on the juice cup in Huang's hand, sending it exploding straight into his face. With an angry, shocked tone, Huang demands to know exactly what Bai means by doing that. Bai simply replies that his face is irritating, his words are annoying, and he needed to pay the price. Hearing that, Huang immediately channels his aura into his hands, snarling, "Oh, I'll show you now, you irritating little punk." The so-called useless teacher tries to stop him, but she's far too slow, especially since Huang is a red-ranked assassin. However, despite all of Huang's flashy moves and aggressive strikes, he fails to land a single hit on our hero. That's because Bai had already activated a protection skill on his body. And while Huang is still processing the fact that his attack was blocked, he suddenly feels a powerful force slam into him, by increasing his own strength and shoving him backward with even greater power. The result is nothing short of astonishing. Bai has just won in a battle of raw physical strength, sending Huang flying across the courtyard. If we zoom in on Huang, we see him bleeding and in terrible shape. But worse than his injuries is the humiliation of losing to a foolish little kid like Bai. The other students have similar reactions. They're all stunned beyond belief. Bai then explains that he chose this class himself, receiving the Sword of Light as a gift. The reason for his choice is simple. He's been familiar with this role for a very, very long time. Huang refuses to admit defeat. He gets back on his feet, accusing Bai of winning purely by luck. After all, he's a red rank, someone untouchable, and there's no way he could ever lose to a weak green rank no matter what. Meanwhile, Huang is nearly losing her mind, because what Bai just used was an incredibly advanced skill. To everyone watching, it looked as if Bai had simply blocked the attack with a key shield, but that wasn't what happened at all. In reality, he had used a counterattack skill, a technique that combines a defensive phase followed immediately by an offensive strike, just like what we saw. Huang wonders to herself how a beginner like Bai could possibly use this skill. Even her own master hadn't perfected it until after 10 full years of relentless training. Breaking the silence, Huang draws an assassin's dagger, his voice dripping with confidence as he asks Bai if he's ready to die. Bai, however, isn't even remotely focused on him. Instead, he calmly explains that he chose this class for more than one reason, the most important being that when evolved to S rank, it becomes the strongest class in the world. Of course, since they're currently in the past, this explains why no one around them has ever heard of such a thing. The students begin whispering among themselves, wondering if the two are actually about to fight in the middle of the school courtyard. No one can understand how the academy could allow this, especially since the rules clearly state that using abilities on school grounds is strictly forbidden. The boy with glasses looks terrified. He knows Huang will never face punishment, not only because he's the son of an influential figure, but also because his uncle is the school's principal. Bai, on the other hand, is just a poor kid with no connections and no backing. That's why the boy with glasses turns to teacher Huang and nervously asks her what they're going to do. The so-called useless teacher, respected by no one, actually tries to step in and stop the fight. But Hong immediately rejects her, saying there's no way he can forgive someone who humiliated him in front of the entire school. He raises his voice, telling her not to bother asking Bai to apologize either, because no matter what, he won't forgive him without beating him to a pulp first. Huang's tension rises at his words, and she explains that the gap between ranks is massive, even at the very start. The reason lies in each rank's multiplier factor, a value used to multiply all of a hunter's stats after awakening. For example, the green rank has a multiplier of just 1. Multiply anything by 1, and it stays the same, meaning green ranks gain no real stat boost at all from awakening. The blue rank's multiplier is 1.5, while the red rank's is 2, which means that just by awakening his power, Hong instantly doubled all of his stats. Standing beside teacher Huang is the boy with glasses, looking just as worried for Bai. He quietly admits that Bai is weaker than Hong in literally every possible way. To him, by challenging someone like Hong is just plain foolish and pointless. People like them are supposed to learn how to coexist with those stronger than them, doing their best to minimize trouble with bullies, nothing more. Because no matter what they do, they'll still end up being bullied and beaten. The only difference is, by swallowing their pride completely, they might reduce how often it happens and how badly they get hurt. The boy with glasses has been living by that mindset for a long time, and it's worked out fine for him. That's why, even if he saw Bai dying right in front of him, he wouldn't dare try to help. Bullies like Hong don't show mercy to anyone. Even the smallest slight would be enough for them to turn someone into a roasted potato. When the useless teacher sees Hong trying to attack Bai, she rushes forward to stop him. Unfortunately for her, Hong is still much faster. Yet, as he closes in, he hesitates for a moment, wondering if Bai will use that counterattack skill again. But Hong's arrogance pushes away all doubt, and he decides to go all in, attacking with his full strength. Bai smiles, and Hong taunts him, "Let's see you dodge this if you're a man." Bai thinks to himself that Hong is an idiot if he really believes he can escape this time. He activates his agility skill, boosting his speed by 50%. Once he's close enough to Hong's body, Bai follows up with another technique, Flash Step, a move that can only be used after mastering the agility skill to 100%. Hong begins bleeding almost instantly after the strike, his mind reeling as he asks himself what just happened. He collapses to the ground in unprecedented shock, injured so badly without even understanding how he was hit. The students burst into chatter, each giving their own version of events. Most think Hong just tripped and fell to the ground, nothing more. But the boy with glasses insists that's impossible. Hong isn't weak or clumsy. The problem is, even the teacher admits she didn't see anything. Then, a girl from their class steps forward, the class representative, Yen. Yen says she had been watching closely from the very start and saw every skill Bai used, except one. The only thing she couldn't see was the exact moment Bai unleashed Flash Step. She admits she has no idea what move he used to cause all those injuries to the pitiful Hong. Bai earns 50 experience points, leaving him with a total of 1,000 needed to reach the next level. He also gains 50 points in the Galaxy element. That's when Bai realizes he can actually gain elemental points from the elements of the opponents he defeats. But there's a problem. The experience points he received were far too low, and since he wants to level up quickly, he decides he needs to start looking for dungeons to clear. While Bai is lost in thought, Hong manages to get back on his feet. He shouts that he's not going to let Bai walk away and attempts to attack him from behind with his sword. But before he can land a strike, a voice calls out his name. The voice belongs to none other than Liang, the dean of the academy, who casually asks Hong if he's looking to get beaten up even more. Hong freezes, clearly nervous, and respectfully calls him uncle, while Bai wonders what this man actually wants. Liang raises his voice slightly, saying that he knows all the students are tired from the awakening ceremony, and that's why he wants everyone to head home and get some rest. One by one, the students begin leaving the school, while Liang tells them to go celebrate their awakening with their families. Hearing that word, families, brings back fragments of Bai's past memories. Meanwhile, Liang tries to speak to him, reminding him that he blatantly broke the school's rules. But Bai isn't paying attention at all. Instead, He tells himself that he remembers this date perfectly, and he needs to check on his family as soon as possible. Overcome with urgency, Bai takes off running, right in the middle of Liang speaking to him and calling his name. The dean assumes he's trying to run away from punishment and turns sharply to Huang, ordering her to keep her students under control. Huang is left with no choice but to apologize, terrified that she might be expelled from the academy if she says anything else. Liang takes Hong to his office, with Hong still fuming in anger. He insists that Bai must have cheated, otherwise, there's no way he could have beaten him. But Liang slams his hand down hard on the desk, demanding that Hong shut his mouth. He then explains the fight from the perspective of a seasoned expert, telling Hong that Bai had waited patiently until he was extremely close, and then used Flash Step, an advanced high-level skill. The most impressive part wasn't just that, my friend. It was the fact that Bai targeted him precisely at that exact second, striking directly at Hong's weak point. Liang's voice grows louder as he says the real shock is that Bai only used basic techniques. Yet even if he himself tried to use those same basics, they wouldn't be executed with such perfection. From Liang's point of view, the battle was like watching a professional gamer playing on a level 1 account, against a complete beginner who had bought a max level account without earning it. Meanwhile, back to Bai, our hero who loves secrets. We see him sprinting, muttering to himself about how foolish he's been. There was something he should have done today that's far more important than the awakening ceremony itself. Inside Bai's home, we see his father, Tian, laughing at a clip playing on the television, while his mother is preparing lunch, waiting for her son to return. The moment Bai steps through the door, his father calls out to him in a cold tone, asking why he's home so early when school should still be in session. But Bai isn't focused on him. His eyes are locked on his mother, someone he hasn't seen in so many years. Overwhelmed with emotion, he says he's just happy she's still alive. His mother, who is deaf, uses sign language to tell him she's made some amazing instant noodles, absolutely unbeatable. Bai calmly tells his mother that today, he wants to eat fish, not instant noodles. At first, she refuses outright, telling him the food is already made and she won't change it. But under the silent weight of his gaze, she hesitates, and finally decides to go out and buy real fish. Bai offers to go with her, but his father calls out to him, telling him to stay. Tian asks why he's acting so strange, and why he only greeted his mother when he came in. He steps closer and says he knows the awakening test was today, then asks exactly what job and rank Bai received. We learn more about Tian. He's a Thunder Warrior, level 26, with a C-grade evaluation. On top of that, he's a red-ranked fighter, meaning he's a force to be reckoned with. Bai replies that, unfortunately, he hasn't awakened his power yet. The reason, he explains, is that the academy was overcrowded today, so only part of the students took the test. The rest will do it tomorrow. Tian refuses to believe him, demanding to know how he came home early when school is still in session. He adds that his nephew awakened as a mere blue rank, which means both he and his father are useless to the family. But since Tian himself is a red rank, it's impossible for his son to be any lower than that. In fact, he's hoping Bai will be gold rank. In the heavy silence that follows, Tian steps even closer and tells Bai he spent a fortune on his education, so he'd better not end up below red rank. That close proximity triggers Bai's aura to flare unintentionally, and that's when his father wastes no time, smashing a bottle over his head in sheer humiliation. With a voice full of fury, Tian demands to know how his son could possibly end up with the weakest rank when he's the child of someone as powerful as him. Tian says he doesn't understand why he's been paying thousands of dollars for the Academy of Abilities, because if he had known this would be Bai's rank, he wouldn't have paid a single cent. His anger continues to rise, and with every surge, he hits Bai harder than before. Bai tells us that his father is an extremely short-tempered and utterly unhinged man. The reason Bai had been so desperate to rush home earlier was because he still remembered what happened on this exact day in his previous life, when his father had beaten him mercilessly after learning the job he'd awakened to. He'd kept hitting him, as if Bai couldn't even feel pain. When his mother saw him being turned into a roasted potato, she stepped in front of her husband, just like she had in every past outburst. But this time, Tian's rage was far greater than ever before. He shattered their home over their heads. By the time Tian had finished his wrestling session, testing every single John Cena move on them, his mother was dead. That's why, the moment Bai came back home this time, he made sure she left, to prevent history from repeating itself. Bai's current problem, however, is that no matter how hard he tries, he can't possibly defeat his father, because of Tian's high level and evaluation. His C-grade evaluation alone gives him a multiplier factor of 4, not just 2 like Hong's. This multiplier doubles with every grade increase, meaning his father's current stats are roughly 10 times greater than Bai's. While Bai is trying to think of a way to defend himself, Tian grabs him by the hair and growls that he wishes he could go back in time and make sure Bai was never even born. As Bai is being shaken like fruit in a blender, he tells us he has a plan, but he just needs to hold out for a little while longer. He figures he has the time anyway, since the most important thing is his mother's safety, and she's far away at the fish shop. But then, his eyes widen in horror. She steps through the door. She stands frozen, shocked by the scene before her. Panic floods Bai's face. How could she be back so soon? He realizes she must have sprinted the whole way there and back, just to get him the food quickly. Fear spreads across her features when Tian calls out to her, telling her to come take a look at your idiot son. He steps toward her with fury in his eyes, telling her to either take him away again or give him up for adoption, because if he had known his son would turn out to be green rank, he never would have let her give birth to him in the first place. Bai's mind flashes back to the time he was sitting in the back of a prison transport van, on his way to jail. A man sitting beside him had asked how he managed to climb from green rank all the way to gold rank at such a young age. After all, everyone knows that to evolve to a higher rank, you have to be at least blue rank and have an A-grade evaluation before you can even attempt it. His cellmate continued, asking why a kid like him was even in prison. Bai's answer was cold and direct. His father deserved to die, and he had to be the one to end him. Back in the present, Tian shoves Bai backward with force when he tries to stop him from hitting his mother, but Bai refuses to give in. He tells himself that no matter how weak he may seem, he's still stronger than ordinary humans, and that's the only reason he's still alive despite all of his father's brutal blows. When his mother steps in front of him to shield him, Tian goes to grab a chair, declaring that he's going to smash it over their heads today. He had believed Bai would save their family's future, becoming a strong hunter, especially since all of his nephews turned out to be weak, with the strongest of them only reaching blue rank. Now, Tian says, Bai has destroyed his last hope. Once Tian is gone, there will be no one left to carry the family name. His rage boils over as he raises the chair, ready to bring it down on his wife's head. But in that instant, Bai activates Flash Step, slamming into his father and sending him flying back. Tian manages to stop himself from falling, but he sustains a minor cut in the process. Instead of being angry, he grins, saying his son's got guts, because he refuses to give up, even if he's useless. Then Tian launches forward with a blindingly fast attack, so fast that Bai can barely see him. Even so, Bai steels himself, moving his sword at the very last second to block the strike. Unfortunately, the block is only temporary. Tian's sheer strength shatters Bai's sword, and his punch carries through, slamming into Bai's body and drawing blood. The onslaught doesn't stop there. Tian follows up with punch after punch, each one backed by his techniques and his deadly aura. But Bai refuses to fall. He knows that if his legs so much as touch the ground, his mother will die instantly. Tian halts his punches for a moment, telling Bai that he really is brave, but that courage means nothing without strength. As Bai struggles to keep himself steady, vowing that he won't let the past repeat itself, a sudden loud knocking echoes through the house, followed by a voice commanding, "Open the door now." Tian stomps over to open it, clearly irritated that someone had interrupted his fun. Standing at the door are Ong, the deputy leader of the inspection division, a red-ranked cloud mage with an A-grade evaluation, and Shin, a member of his team, a blue-ranked cloud mage with a C-grade evaluation. Tian's voice falters the moment he sees them, especially when he realizes Ong himself is standing there. Ong explains that they've received a report that the criminal Snow has been spotted in a nearby building, and at the moment, they're checking every building one by one. As Tian tries to make small talk, saying he sees that man's name on the news all the time, Ong notices Bai, his face covered in blood and his condition clearly serious. When Ong tries to ask what happened, Tian laughs it off, saying Bai is just a foolish kid who tripped while running an errand. But Bai refuses to let him lie on his behalf. He speaks up and tells the truth. From Bai's inner thoughts, we learn that he had planned all of this from the start. He was the one who called the authorities about Snow before even coming home. Ong turns to Tian, asking if what Bai just said is true. Tian tries to deny it, claiming his son must be joking, but Bai refuses to back down. He begins explaining to Ong in detail about every injury on his body. Ong then recalls a specific clause in their nation's law, one that states any ability user who commits a crime like this must be detained for 15 days. Ong and his subordinate are stunned by Bai's words, but they quickly realize he isn't bluffing. From the way he talks, it's clear he's sharp, knowledgeable, and aware of things far beyond his age. That's why Ong turns to Tian and says coldly, "You have the right to remain silent, pal, because I'm placing you under arrest right now, and anything you say will be used against you. Tion's temper is about to explode as they drag him toward the door, and he tries to lunge at Bai. But Shin warns him that if he tries anything, they'll be forced to strike him for real. Once Tion is taken away by the authorities, Bai's mother pulls him into a tight embrace, still shaken by fear. Bai, however, is relieved. He's changed the past and saved his mother, even if it's only temporary. He reassures her, telling her that this will literally be the last time his father ever bullies them. Then he adds that, during the fight, he managed to steal the key to his father's secret vault, and he's going to open it right now. That key must belong to something extremely valuable, because Tion had once betrayed his own teammates for it. What's more, whatever is inside helped him raise his evaluation from A grade to C grade. Bai explains that the secret hidden inside is definitely dangerous, so dangerous that even in his past life, he only learned about it after his father's death. We then learn that this secret is a high-grade weapon, but nothing more. Bai admits that a weapon alone without entering a dungeon won't be of much use to him, especially since all dungeons are under the control of the rulers, and only licensed guilds are allowed to enter. Normally, he'd be stuck with the weak, low-level dungeons assigned to his school. But there is one hidden dungeon whose location only he knows, knowledge carried over from his previous life. Without wasting any time, we see Bai heading straight to that dungeon. Its name, the Demon's Lair, hidden deep inside an abandoned location. He hypes himself up, telling himself that he needs to raise his level fast enough to become the strongest awakened in the world within just a few months. Meanwhile, over at the police department, we hear the chatter of officers talking. They say they've launched a massive operation to search for Snow, but they've failed to find even the slightest trace of him. The officers suspect that the call they received about Snow was fake. From their conversation, we learn that Snow is one of the rebels, one of the insurgents. Their tension grows as they discuss him, especially since today is a holiday, and no one wants trouble on a day like this. Shin turns to Ong, asking if the captain will really be heading home early today, but Ong cuts him off, telling him to stop that line of conversation immediately. Their talk is interrupted by the irritating voice of Tion, who tells them to treat him more kindly, since this is his first time in jail. Tion congratulates Ong on the upcoming birth of his child, since his wife is 8 months pregnant, and says he has a friend who owns a maternity hospital that's the best there is, offering to have her give birth there for free. Aang's temper flares at this, because that's a blatant bribe. He asks Tion how he can say such a thing, especially when he was once a respected hunter. Ong storms off, telling Tion that he never imagined he'd see him go from hunter to thief. Shin picks up where Ong left off, telling Tion to relax and keep quiet, because if anyone finds out about the bribery attempt, his prison sentence will be extended. When Shin leaves, Tion grows angry and even releases his aura in frustration. Back to our hero, Bai's thoughts echo in his mind. His father will be out in just 15 days, and in that time, he must raise his strength significantly to protect his mother from him. He explains that the Demon's Lair is simply another name for dungeons, or gates, which appear randomly in any location. Anytime a dungeon is discovered, the guilds immediately rush to buy its rights from the government. This makes it extremely difficult, almost impossible, for solo hunters to raise their level quickly. Of course, that only applies to ordinary hunters, not to someone like Bai, who has returned from the future. Because from now on, he'll know the exact location of everything before the guilds even hear about it, and that will make him unstoppable. Bai knows exactly how dangerous this is. Dungeons are meant to be cleared by a full, well-rounded team to minimize risk. He explains in detail the difficulty of dungeons. An F-rank dungeon requires at least 3 A-rank hunters to clear it. An E-rank dungeon is even tougher, needing 3 A-rank hunters plus 2 additional D-rank hunters. Bai doesn't know the exact rank of this dungeon, but he's 90% sure it's F-rank, meaning it should be the lowest rank he's aware of right now in terms of danger. Deep down, he wishes he knew other hunters who could join him inside this gate, but he doesn't. He's forced to enter alone, all to prepare himself for facing his monstrous father. The moment he steps through the dungeon's gate, an intense cold bites at him. He immediately realizes that the monsters here are of the ice element. Continuing down the path, he wishes he'd brought winter clothes. After a short walk, Bai freezes in place, his eyes locking onto a massive beast surrounded by a disturbing number of human corpses. It's an ice bear, level 8, A-rank. That means, unfortunately, this dungeon isn't F-rank like he'd hoped, but A-rank, far deadlier than expected. Before he can process the danger, he hears movement behind him. Turning around, he sees an ice wolf lunging straight for him. Tension spikes, because even the weakest wolves here are A rank and stronger than him. Still, he narrowly dodges the wolf's first strike, pushing himself backward to create distance. But the wolf refuses to let him escape, immediately launching a second attack. This time, Bai meets it head-on, blocking the blow with his dagger. The monster's strength is greater than his, shown clearly as he's pushed backward. But Bai decides to switch to offense. Against a relatively weak monster like this, he can't afford to just defend. Drawing from his vast combat experience, he lands a clean, lethal strike, killing the wolf outright thanks to his weapon. We learn that Bai's dagger is A rank, each strike dealing more than triple his base damage. Defeating the wolf rewards him with 50 experience points and 50 cloud element points. Right now, Bai is level 1 in A rank, and to level up just once, he'll need to kill about 20 of these wolves. It seems, my friend, that Bai's wish has just come true, because a whole pack of ice wolves is approaching him, and they've brought their leader along. Amidst the chaos, Bai shares some valuable insight. If he reaches level 10 in A rank, he will be automatically promoted to D rank, and at that point, he'll become a force to be reckoned with. With that thought in mind, Bai finally charges at the monsters, cutting them down one after another. He admits their numbers are overwhelming for his current level, but with his experience, taking them down will be no problem. His reason for going on the offensive instead of waiting for their attack is simple. He doesn't want to give them a single chance to surround him and use their numbers to overwhelm him. As the fight continues, the sharpness of Bai's strikes increases. He's growing more accustomed to his current body. But drawing on the skills from his past life is exhausting for him, and he knows he's in a race against time. For that exact reason, the moment he finishes off the regular wolves, he immediately lunges at their leader, determined to kill it before taking even a second to rest. Thanks to his deadly dagger, Bai is able to defeat even the pack leader in just 1 or 2 strikes. That's why he's so optimistic, thinking he might reach D rank today. But then the system notifies him, "Congratulations, you have reached level 2. Bai feels a bit disappointed. His body is already worn out from gaining just a single level. He starts gathering only the most valuable gems from the ground to take with him, since he doesn't have a bag big enough to carry them all. His mind drifts briefly to the guild he'll need to join in the future if he wants to level up quickly. He says the best choice would be the Guild of Kings, which even has its own academy of abilities. Among all the students there, only the top performers are allowed to officially join their ranks. As for Bai's father, Tion, he had once been a hunter in that very same guild, but he was eventually expelled, and from that moment on, no other guild was willing to take him in. Being kicked out of the guild also halted his growth entirely, locking his level and rank at C rank forever. Bai's thoughts are interrupted just seconds later, when a massive pack of ice wolves appears behind him. Strangely, instead of turning to face them, he refuses to fight, breaking into a full sprint away from them, almost as if he's afraid. As he runs, Bai begins smashing through every tree in his path. It only takes a moment to realize what he's doing. He's deliberately drawing the monster's attention to himself, forcing them to gather all at once rather than fighting them in small groups. Within moments, the wolves have surrounded Bai on all sides, and every single one of them is level 4, just like the wolf pack leader from earlier. Bai says he doesn't care about all these smaller monsters anyway, and when a thunderous explosion echoes through the dungeon, he smirks, saying that it seems his plan worked. Soon, his true objective becomes clear. He wanted to awaken the ice bear, the level 8 monster from earlier. The problem? It's now in a state of rage, making it far stronger than normal. The good news? Its level hasn't changed, meaning Bai still has a high chance of victory. While the bear tears into the other monsters, Bai strikes them as well, making sure he lands the killing blow each time so that he earns the experience points. The rest of the monsters are terrified of the raging bear. None of them are paying any attention to Bai. All they want is to get as far away from the beast as possible. And that's exactly why Bai barely has to put in any effort to kill them. His only focus is on keeping his distance from the ice bear itself. The results of his clever plan come quickly. Within seconds, the system notifies him that he has reached level 4. But now, the remaining monsters are beginning to realize what Bai has been doing, and their attention shifts toward him. Bai, however, is starting to feel drained. His health is low, and he admits that he's tired already. Still, it's obvious he's been planning for the long game, because he now says it's time for phase 2 of his strategy. From his thoughts, we learn that he intends to use the icy nature of the dungeon to his advantage. The cracks in the frozen ground have grown larger, and soon, the entire floor will collapse. Bai decides to speed up the process manually. He slams his weapon into the ground with full force, shattering the ice beneath his feet. The ground collapses instantly, sending the surrounding monsters plummeting into the abyss. In that moment, Bai gains a massive amount of free experience points. The system appears, "Congratulations, you've reached level 7. Nearby, the ice bear is still rampaging, smashing everything in sight. Bai notes that he only needs 3 more levels to reach D rank. He also receives a new title that grants him a passive skill, increasing all his stats by 10% whenever he's facing more than one monster at a time. Then Bai explains something surprising. This ice bear isn't even the dungeon boss. He's certain the real boss is level 10, but what he doesn't understand is why it's been hiding all this time. With all the noise they've made, it should have been impossible for it to sleep through the chaos. Before he can finish that thought, a wave of fast, concentrated ice magic comes streaking toward him and the other monsters. Bai instantly realizes the truth. The dungeon boss was never asleep. It was simply waiting for the perfect moment to strike, after Bai and the other monsters had already burned through much of their stamina. In a display of overwhelming power, the boss freezes the ice bear solid. Bai manages to leap out of the spell's range, barely, but the boss refuses to let him go. Slowly, Bai's legs become encased in ice. He's in serious trouble now. His body is freezing over, and if he tries to run, he'll fall right off the cliff like the mindless beasts earlier. Then comes the real shock. 2 demonic ice apes, each level 10, step into view, and they're not even the bosses. The actual dungeon boss finally reveals itself. The Ice King, a D-rank mage, level 1. With tension flooding his veins, Bai mutters that the rules of the game have just changed. Defeating a D-rank boss normally requires 5 A-rank hunters and 3 D-rank hunters working together. Moments later, the freezing process spreads across Bai's entire body. A twisted grin spreads across the Ice King's face as it orders one of its minions to crush Bai's frozen body. But the result is nothing like the boss expected. Not only does Bai manage to block the attack, he counters with a perfect counterstrike, killing the first monster outright. The skill he used to break free is called Shatter, a technique that consumes a massive portion of his energy to free himself from any restraint. Bai knew the boss was also in a weakened state right now, still within the cooldown period before it could cast its freezing spell again. But then came the real problem. The Ice King suddenly released the ice bear from its restraints, now having full control over it. A wave of tension and despair washed over Bai. That monster alone was terrifying enough, but now, the boss also freed every single creature it had frozen earlier. All of them, along with the demonic apes, were charging straight toward him. One of the apes lunged at him with immense force. Bai managed to block the strike, but only temporarily. He knew his chances of winning were practically zero. These apes could take multiple hits, even from his overpowered dagger, before going down. The second ape tried to take advantage of his distraction, attacking from the opposite side. But Bai reacted instantly, leaping upward and pushing himself back to safety. He didn't even have time to breathe before the ice bear was already upon him, delivering a swift and brutal attack. This time, Bai couldn't dodge in time. The sheer force of the blow sent him flying backward. Yet somehow, through sheer willpower, Bai stabilized his stance and landed back on his feet. His legs were barely holding him up, strained by his rapidly draining energy and the crushing pressure of facing such overwhelming numbers. And then, things got even worse. The dungeon boss itself stepped into the fray, casting its blizzard storm once more. Bai was stunned. How could the cooldown be this short? Even so, he refused to surrender. His mind flashed back to his previous life, how he had faced massive hordes before, and still survived. But right now Bai saw only 2 options, both equally grim. The first, fight until his last breath and die here. The second, jump from the cliff and pray he somehow survived. Unlike the beasts that had fallen before, he chose. Throwing himself over the edge, Bai began his descent. But before he could even hope for a miracle, the boss's freezing spell grazed his legs mid-fall. Now, he wasn't just plummeting off the cliff. He was plummeting, encased in ice. When the dungeon boss saw Bai in that state, it simply turned away, assuming he was already dead. Of course, the surrounding monsters weren't foolish enough to leap after him and share his fate. But Bai's eyes were still open inside that block of ice. Refusing to surrender, he pushed his battered body to its limit, activating Shatter once more despite his terrible condition. Meanwhile, back at Bai's home, his mother had finally woken up. She stepped into his room, surprised that her son was still asleep at such a late hour. It was already 10 in the morning, yet there was no sign of Bai anywhere in the house. Her shock deepened when she spotted a note he had left behind. It claimed he was staying over at a friend's place, but she wasn't buying it. If that were really true, he wouldn't have left a note at all. Even so, she couldn't figure out where he might have gone, especially after the strange feeling she'd had since he came home yesterday, as if he'd become a completely different person. Back in the frozen depths, Bai was still alive. He revealed that everything had been part of his plan. When the monsters fell from the cliff earlier, he had counted more than 100 of them. Yet his level had only risen by 3. That's the equivalent of just 60 kills. That's when it hit him. Something down below must have saved the others from dying. Without hesitation, Bai had thrown himself over the cliff as well. His current miserable state wasn't from the fall. It was because he had burned through a massive amount of life force to shatter the boss's freezing spell. Unfortunately, he had no time to catch his breath. A frost tiger, a rank E creature at level 9, was already closing in on him. As the predator's shadow loomed over him, Bai's thoughts drifted back to the happier moments of his past life. Times when he had fought alongside his team, never needing to hunt alone. Those warm memories were quickly replaced by darker ones. Faces of his enemies, the worst moments he had endured, from both his previous life and his new one. They all came flooding back at once. The rage burning inside Bai, and his unshakable thirst for revenge, snapped him back to full awareness. With every ounce of strength he had left, he sprang to his feet, seizing the beast's fangs to stop it from tearing into him. His voice sharp and unwavering, Bai growled, "I won't let the past repeat itself, no matter what. If I die here, my mother and my friends will suffer all over again." And then, he unleashed the doubled power of friendship, not from one life, but from 2. Channeling that willpower, he delivered a devastating kick straight into the monster. It wasn't enough to kill a high-level beast like this, but it didn't matter. Bai had shattered the barrier of fear and despair inside him. The battle he was about to face would be brutal. Many of the boss's underlings had followed him down, determined to make sure he was dead. Painful memories surged through Bai, fueling his body with raw power. His adrenaline spiked, granting him a temporary strength boost that was almost double his normal abilities. This sudden stat surge even triggered the system to attempt promoting him to rank D. It failed, but in exchange, Bai obtained a new skill, Advanced Royal Sword Style. Bai smirked. He didn't need to reach rank D if he had this monstrous skill, one he had only unlocked in his previous life much later, after leaving prison. This technique didn't just let him deal several times more damage than his current level should allow. It was also infused with the power of friendship, making it even more devastating. And so, the moment he finished using it, every monster around him collapsed. Even the ones that hadn't been close enough to touch him fell lifeless to the ground. The system chimed in. "Congratulations, you've reached level 8. Reaching this level fully restored Bai's life force. On top of that, he gained a new title, the Ice Wanderer, a passive title that granted him an extra 100 resistance points against all ice-based attacks. Looks like the system was feeling extra generous today, because it granted Bai an ultimate skill called Pure Land. A skill that could restore his vitality, though the exact conditions for using it remained unclear. Bai kept moving forward, and whenever he encountered a group of monsters, he stopped to wipe them out without hesitation. After reaching level 8, E-rank beasts felt weak to him. On top of that, his Ice Wanderer title made the cold almost unnoticeable. He didn't even need a coat. With his vitality fully restored, he was ready to climb the mountain and take down the boss and his army. Meanwhile, the boss was lounging in his icy lair. We learned he belonged to the Ape faction, and unfortunately for Bai, his army included more than just 2 of them. What the boss didn't know was that Bai was still alive and had already reached level 10. But he was about to find out. The ceiling of his icy chamber shattered, and Bai dropped down, glaring at him. "Get ready to die," Bai declared, his current strength now close to matching the boss's. Back home, Bai's mother stood by the window, worry clouding her face. She wondered where her son had gone, and if he'd be coming home tonight, or not at all. Back in the dungeon, the bigger picture came into view. Bai had already eliminated every single one of the boss's minions, except for the apes. That slaughter had pushed him to level 10 in the E rank, but the boss didn't seem impressed. He ordered his underlings to attack. The first ape leapt high into the air, swinging a powerful strike at Bai. Bai didn't just block it with ease, he cut the beast down with 2 swift strikes of his dagger. At that moment, the boss realized Bai wasn't the same as before, so he stepped in personally, unleashing his ice storm to freeze Bai once more. Too bad for him. That attack no longer worked on the monstrous Bai. The boss quickly realized that Bai was targeting him above all others, so he ordered his minions to protect him and attack Bai together. But Bai shouted back, his voice ringing with absolute confidence. That might have worked before, but now, anyone who gets near me dies in an instant. True to his word, he tore through the enemies in front of him and charged straight for the boss, severing the boss's arm in a single motion. Without giving him a chance to recover, Bai unleashed a spider-like chain of attacks, striking over and over until the boss finally fell. Bai's dream had come true. The kill granted him 1,000 experience points, enough to push him into the D rank. The system confirmed the promotion. His stats doubled instantly. Then, almost like a reminder, it pointed out something Bai had completely forgotten. He'd been so focused on leveling up, he hadn't kept track of the elemental points he'd been earning. For every monster he'd killed, he'd gained 50 cloud element points, and now, he had enough to awaken a second class. The system officially granted him the title of Red Cloud Mage, an E-rank mage class. Bai explained that the red element was far stronger than his original green one. In fact, the stats of a red E-rank mage were equal to those of a green D-rank warrior. Defeating the boss also rewarded him with something he desperately needed, a storage bag for tools and equipment. Now that he could carry gems without issue, Bai decided to finish off the apes in front of him. But before doing so, he wanted to test his new class, switching over to the Red Cloud Mage form. Of course, he couldn't use 2 class abilities at once, but he could swap between them as he pleased. Time passed quickly in the dungeon. Meanwhile, back at home, Bai's mother sat alone, crying over his absence. It had been over a full day since he'd left, but her grief vanished the moment Bai finally walked through the door. With a soft smile, he greeted her and apologized for taking so long. Without a second thought, she rushed forward and wrapped him in a tight hug, unable to speak. Bai, on the other hand, teased her gently, asking if she'd skipped eating all day just to wait for him. Bai decided it was time to get straight to the point. He asked his mother to focus and told her his plan. They needed to move to a new home, far away from his father. We then learned that, before returning home, Bai had gone to sell the gems he'd collected. Since he still wasn't an officially registered hunter, his only option was the black market. The merchant he dealt with tried to lowball him, offering just 800 yuan per gem. That instantly made Bai snatch them back in anger, snapping that their real value was at least 8,000 yuan each, or he'd walk away. After a long, heated argument, the merchant finally caved, agreeing to buy them for 7,000 yuan apiece. Bai left the deal satisfied. Right now, his only goal was to earn enough to rent a new home for his mother, a place where she'd be safe. After all, she hadn't experienced a single happy day in his previous life. When she saw the new house, she was stunned. Bai silently vowed to himself his father would never hurt them again. The rent was 15,000 yuan, which made his mother protest immediately. But Bai brushed off her concerns, assuring her that he was rich now. Finally, she relaxed, smiling for the first time in a long while, and happily went back to cooking. Bai took a quiet moment to himself, thinking he'd solved the housing problem and reached D rank in record time, a huge achievement. But a bigger issue loomed. His father would be out of prison soon. Bai knew he wouldn't have peace until that man was gone for good. He swore he'd get his revenge, for himself and for his friends. But before that, his father's problem had to be dealt with. For now, his focus had to return to school. If he wanted to grow stronger quickly, he needed to find the right tool for the job. Meanwhile, in a completely different place, one of the hunters finally emerged. This man was Hong, addressed by his subordinates as young master. They told him he had truly become a force to be reckoned with, his strength rising with every passing day. One of Hong's subordinates tried to hand him some water, urging him to take a break. But Hong didn't even look at her. He simply stated that he had to enter the next dungeon immediately. He wanted to reach level 5 before he had to face Bai again. Meanwhile, in a quiet room elsewhere, a woman with an air of importance was reviewing reports. She noted that none of this year's students possessed a gold rank ability. From her presence alone, it was clear she was a gold rank herself, and she wasn't speaking carelessly. Still, she looked disappointed. Without any gold rank talents, the upcoming practical training would be meaningless. Back with our protagonist, we find Bai devouring his food like a man starved. He casually asked his mother why she hadn't woken him up earlier. Using sign language, she told him he had been in such a deep sleep, and when she approached, she could see how exhausted he looked. She just couldn't bring herself to wake him. She reassured him there was no need to rush his meal. Being a little late for school wouldn't hurt. For the first time, Bai felt like he could eat in peace, far away from his father's shadow. But his thoughts were suddenly interrupted when his mother leaned in, almost as if to tell him to pay attention. She asked if there was anything he'd been thinking about lately. A game, a book, maybe even an electronic device? Bai laughed, asking if she was seriously planning to buy him a gift for no reason. She simply pointed at the calendar, reminding him that his birthday was coming up this Friday. Bai froze in surprise. He had completely forgotten people like him even had birthdays. The last time he'd celebrated one was with his mother, before she was killed by that cruel man. His mind drifted for a moment, wondering if he even had any wishes left. But with his mother alive now, he felt like he already had the whole world. The only thing he wanted was revenge against the traitor, though that would have to wait until he dealt with his father first. Later at school, the coach's voice echoed across the field, telling them he hoped they were ready for the upcoming tests. They'd had 2 full days of rest, so their bodies should be in peak condition. He reminded them that their academy was the official training ground for the Royal Guild, which meant anyone who delivered an impressive performance could earn a place among its ranks. From the coach's words, we learn that the students are now in their final year of middle school, and these tests will be their last, broadcast live for everyone to see. He went on to explain that whoever delivers the best performance will be granted the honor of joining the high school skill polishing trip, the most important event of the year. This trip offers students the rare chance to interact directly with the Royal Guild, and it takes place in the royal city of Gao, home to the Guild's headquarters. The mention of Gao City stirred something in Bai's memory. That was where he had once been imprisoned, and where, inside those prison walls, he had met his master. It was also the hometown of his treacherous former friend. Even so, that man had nothing to do with Bai's teacher, not back then, and certainly not now. Bai's current plan was clear. Claim first place in this exam, earn a spot on the trip, and once in Gao City, hunt down the traitor. The students' excitement reached its peak when they learned the exam would be held on Friday. One of them asked, through the coach's assistant, whether the test would take place inside a dungeon. The coach quickly shut them down. That's enough questions for now. Head to the gravity room, he ordered. Physical training would be done there to prepare their bodies for the challenge ahead.